Hey guys, Ken Smith Fishing. Yes, I wear a suit almost every day. I'm in the insurance business. I gotta make a real living. So this is gonna be an update to the, and this has been pretty well documented. There was a pretty good article, or there was a good article in the Houston Chronicle about this earlier in the week. But I had a conversation with Todd Driscoll, and he's updated me on the telemetry study of the 50 fish they were gonna track at Toledo Bend. And you'll see I'm also holding, gotten a new shipment of Lou's rods in today. And UPS didn't like one of the tubes, so they sent me a two-piece rod, UPS being they. Luckily Lou's is replacing it, no problem. So anyway, so talked to Todd, and there's been a pretty significant setback, and it sort of blew him away. So if you recall, they were going to do, or they're going to do, a study tracking 50 largemouth bass, generally 5 pounds and above, in the Howson Basin at Toledo Bend. And so they started this process several weeks ago, and they started collecting fish. They did most of the original fish, or maybe all the original fish, through electroshocking. And the term Todd used was the water temperature was in a dynamic condition, if you will. So basically the water temperature was dropping pretty rapidly. And it's interesting to note here, so the surgery method they used to put this 1.5 inch long by 3/4 inch in diameter transmitter, if you will, in these bass has been proven, tested around the country for years and years and years. Much lower than a 10% mortality for any of these fish they do this with. And I was real interested, so we kind of talked about how they do this actual surgery. So what he said was, when they do an electroshock, they use 5, 6, or 7 amps to shock those fish to float them up and to study them. He said in this case they use basically 4 to 5 milliamps, basically just to stun those fish where they won't move. They keep them in water, basically mostly submerged, also pouring highly oxygenated, I can't say that word, oxygenated water, you know what I'm trying to say, over those fish's gills. So the fish they try to do their best not to stress the fish with the surgery. And I thought this was really interesting. They do a control fish as they do this. So what he described for me also is there's a second batch of fish he's looking at right now, and they actually do 6 fish. 6 fish get treated exactly the same, only so how they're shocked in anesthesia, how they're handled in the water, the length of time they're handled in the water, and then they go into the same recovery tank as the other fish. But of those 6 fish, only 5 get the surgery, so they can see if there's a problem later. Was it the surgery that caused the problem? So the original fish they did, and I'm going to read this here, so they collected 26 bass, and they did a surgery on, I believe, all 26, so they may have had a couple of control fish in there as well. And what they discovered is, so the transmitter in the fish, my apologies, I'm reading as I go. The transmitter in the fish emits a certain beep if the fish quits moving. So if the fish doesn't move in 24 hours, it changes the beep it's transmitting to tell them that there's been a deceased fish. And what they discovered was that within 2 weeks they had roughly an 80% mortality, and they now have had 100% of mortality. They have recovered 12 of those 26 transmitters, and those things are not cheap. He said that basically, he said the ecosystem over there is so is basically so good that the fish that died, scavengers have already gotten those fish. A lot of those transmitters have been, so they recovered some around the edge of the water, but a lot of them were drug up into the woods. And he said the problem is those transmitters are good in the water, not great on land. So he thinks they've probably lost a number of those transmitters. I think when we talked, they had recovered 12 of the 26. They knew that there were more on the bank than they didn't think they would find. And interestingly, they also identified one up in an eagle's nest. So an eagle had picked up a carcass, and that transmitter was in an eagle's nest. At the same time, by the way, Jake Norman, the biologist at Fork, was about to do the same thing. And of course, Todd picked up the phone, called him, and said, hold on, we got an issue. I've had 100% mortality in my fish. So Jake basically then did, so these guys are so good, they start thinking through what possibly could have gone wrong with this surgery. So the first thing that could have been was there a contamination at the Athens site? Was there something wrong with the surgery method? Was there something wrong with the tools they were using? Was there something in the water at Toledo that was killing these fish? So Jake collected 5 fish from I guess from a holding tank in Athens, did the same surgery on those 5 fish, and then was able to monitor those 5 fish. And it sounds like what happened is they're seeing this bacterial, I'm going to make sure I say this right, sorry, not a bacterial, this fungal infection is showing up specifically at the incision site. He said the fish that they monitor now, so he now has 5 fish. He's done this with 5 more fish, and I'll explain that in a minute, again back in Brooklyn at that hatchery. But he said about a week in, they start seeing signs of this infection at the incision site, and they have basically 100% mortality then within about 2 weeks. He said they studied the insides of the fish that they've lost. There's nothing inside that appears to be killing these fish. It doesn't appear that it's seepage through the incision site. He said they basically do, he said it's about a 3/4 inch incision, and they put 3 little stitches in there. He said it does not appear that there's water seeping into that wound. He said this appears to be purely from the fungal infection. Now I apologize, I'm looking at my notes and I don't recall, so they did 12 more fish so their concern was, and they are believing, and by the way, he said they've done a ton of research. There's nothing in any scientific studies they've done or any writings that suggest that these fish are overly stressed as the water in a dynamically cooling water temperature environment. Although, and I asked Todd, I said, is there a paper in this? And he said, yeah, most likely if this proves out to be what this is. So I guess they could control the water temp. They did 12 more fish at 55. 7 died in 7 to 12 days, but 5 were fine a month later. So it appears that it's not just cool weather, but it's cool water, excuse me, it's cooling water. And again, he's speculating at this point. He says that possibly a lower heart rate also causes, because remember, cold water fish are cold natured, so as the water falls, water temperature cools, so also does their heart rate slows down. He said that possibly also means that their immunity levels have dropped off. And I actually asked Todd, I said, I have to wonder if the opposite is true, if part of our mortality we experience with the spawn every year is because the water is rapidly increasing in temperature. I could almost hear him scratching his head over the phone that, you know, that's something that they might, you know, that's a possibility. So Todd has now put 5 fish. Again, he took 6. He's put 5. He cooled a tank to 75 degrees for a week, put the fish in there, let them be acclimated to that temperature for a week. And then he did surgery on those fish. I believe it would have been a week ago today. Today is Tuesday. And I texted him a minute ago. All right, so there you go. His text message just now. Seems we are right about the water temp deal. Our 5 fish at 75 degrees are perfectly fine now, 8 days post-surgery. So I think they would have seen signs of that infection and or mortality in those fish over that period of time. So what this probably tells us is that there will be a delay in the study until post-spawn. You don't want to put these fish, and by the way, Todd and I talked, they thought this was the absolute perfect time to do this because it seems fish are so much hardier in the winter, you know, as the water cools off. They were flabbergasted by this, just really surprised that they're having this problem. But they're theorizing, and I think this is proving out that fish are stressed as water temperature cools off rapidly, which also might suggest a little bit about why maybe fish are a little bit harder to catch when water's cooling off rapidly. I know I'm kind of jumping to a conclusion there, but it kind of seems logical to me, and it probably seems logical to you guys as well. By the way, so another thing he mentioned to me that that his hatchery guys had in fact warned them that they had seen increased mortality in fish, and I asked him, was it just Florida strain, and he said no, it was Florida hybrids and native fish. But they had seen, even though there's nothing in the scientific literature, that he had been warned by the hatchery guys that they had seen higher mortality when they are handling fish in rapidly cooling water temperatures. So when they were moving them around, they saw this same phenomenon when that occurred as well. So I think we will see these studies, both the Toledo study, and I didn't know about the Fork study that Jake's going to do, but it looks like that study will also be put off. I would guess probably till May, maybe. I'm just making that up, but you know, once water temperatures, once the fish have recovered from the spawn, and they feel like they won't have the mortality that they've experienced in this period. So don't call right now if you've got a fish wanting them to do the study. And as we get more results, I'm sure Todd and I will talk again in the next few weeks to see if those 5 fish are still, to see if those 5 fish are still doing well. And I think that tells us a lot, and we'll go from there. So let me see if there's anything else in here I wanted to mention. So one of the things I did ask Todd, and it was kind of an aside from our conversation, when we catch those fish who have those sores on them, I said, does putting anything on those fish help? And he said the best thing for them is his terms are intense salt dip, which he said was a 5% salt mixture. You remember, if you go back to the Driscoll, if you haven't seen, by the way, the videos that we did with Todd, right there, I'll put a link to all of that video series. But he said a 5% for 30 seconds intense salt dip, so is the best thing for that. And he said most commercially available water treatments that you put in your live well have salt in them. But as you remember from that conversation, my frustration when I tried to find out what was in those different kind of stay alive type, and I may have just named a brand there, but I didn't mean to, but those things that you pour in your live well to help your fish survive, a lot of them consider their ingredients a trade secret, and they won't tell you what's in them. So that was my frustration with that. Okay, so that's all my notes that I have from that. Thanks, Todd, for reaching out and talking with me and giving me an update on that. Again, if you didn't see it, there is an article in the Houston Chronicle earlier this week that talks about this. A guy did a nice job with that as well. We'll continue to monitor this and give you guys updates. I also just want to say thanks. This is hard sometimes for me, and and this being the videos and the editing. I work a full-time job, you know, selling life insurance in Dallas, Texas, and so a lot of my editing is done at night and sometimes late at night, especially with an infant in the house. And I don't have a staff. I certainly am not Scott Martin. So when somebody's working on a video, it's Ken Smith. And you guys have given me some of the nicest compliments about my content. And as I've said before, I always take constructive criticism because I can't get better if you guys don't tell me what you like or what I'm doing that you think I could do better. So I got a number of just incredibly nice comments to my videos. And guys, I read every comment, I read every email, I respond to every email. Again, if you need me, Ken Smith, fishing@outlook.com. It really means a lot to me that you guys comment and say nice things and give me constructive criticism because this, although I enjoy doing this, it's become a second job. And as you guys know, with my agreement with Tackle Warehouse, where if you buy through my links, they support me, and absolutely with the 6 Cents guys, they've been a huge supporter of mine, and the Lose guys have been a huge supporter of mine. So when you buy those products, the 6 Cents using the Ken10 code, or the Lose stuff through Tackle Warehouse website, those are all ways that you guys are also saying thank you back to me, and I just got to say thank you to all you guys. Be real honest, I'd love to do this for a living. I'm a really long ways from doing that, but I try to give you guys quick and honest content. I don't try to hide anything, and I've actually had a guy reach out to me this week to try to help me on Toledo Bend, which is awesome. I mean, as he said, you know, I put out videos to try to help you guys, and he reached out to try to help me, and man, I really appreciate it. So again, I'm babbling a little bit, but I'm having a great time, and I've made a bunch of new friends, and I'm just really enjoying doing this, other than, you know, being up at 11:30 at night editing videos. But you guys saying thanks and saying the nice things you say really means something to me. So thanks for that. Thanks for watching. Please share. I would love to grow my channel. I know that because I'm East Texas sort of centric, I'm never going to have 200,000 followers. I say that. Lake Fork guy was Lake Fork guy at one point. He's got 500,000 followers. So maybe I will, but for now, I'm having a great time growing the channel, and I appreciate all you guys tuning in. So I will have more videos up for you, surprise, surprise, in the next couple of days, including Bass Champs Saturday on Rayburn, Bass Champs Saturday on Toledo, and then Sweet 16 Sunday on Rayburn. And I've also got a hummingbird live video I'm going to try to get up here in the next few days. If you don't use that tool, it's an awesome tool. So look for that video as well. Thanks.